Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. Our first YCS representing the 2024 WCQ season has concluded. This event was quite a big deal because it is our first look at what we have with the decks representing the format, and it lays down the groundwork on how people were preparing for our first months with regionals, locals, OTS tournaments, and then special events leading up to this. Take note, there are more couple YCSs coming this month. This was a team YCS, so it's not much more on just deck representation, but it's also player representation and like what the teams were like giving out. However, that does not take away from the deck's performance and how well they were been doing in this format. Also, another disclaimer, we might have a potential ban list in the coming weeks during this month, so anything that can be brought up from this YCS can be like subject to change. That being said, this still is a very high tier event. This is the first major event that we have in the year, so the decks that were shown here like all have a merit for contention, and there are strategies that you need to be looking out for, and not only that, but also like decks to be prepared for, decks to look forward to. And that doesn't take away from the decks that are doing well in the regional season. It mainly just means that the decks that performed very optimally are decks that you will probably see more moving forward. So right here we have the top 8. We didn't have a deck representation for top 16, but from what I've heard from other sources, Kashtira was the deck that represented Top Cut the most. However, we're just going to bring up the decks that got represented the most in top 8. So the decks that have been represented the most was there in top 8. There was a total of 8 Unchained, 3 Kashtira, 3 Purely, 2 Bestial Dragons, 2 Chimera Branded, 2 Labyrinth, 2 Sprite variants, one was Runic and the other was Pure, 1 Vanadium, and 1 Vanquish Soul. In my last video, I brought up the potential, how Chimera Branded was one of the potential contenders, and that it had a very strong possibility of not only making waves but getting very far at this first major event. And it seems that I was proven right. Out of the top 8, we see 2 of those decks. So to some extent, that deck was very powerful enough and well positioned into this format to just do very well in contention. So today I wanted to cover a different strategy that got bolstered with Dune, and if you see by the number, the deck performed exceptionally well this weekend, and that deck is Unchained. So when it comes to Unchained, I kind of want to bring this up because not only was it the most represented deck in top 8, but a lot of really good players were playing it, like Christian Reina, Walter Jewell, Jesse Cotton, Patrick Hoban. Like, you had a lot of top tier players playing this deck, and I kind of wanted to bring up like a few things that kind of lead to this conclusion on why was this deck probably a better pick for them and to many other players, and why did it perform well as opposed to other strategies that we already have. As you guys already know, before Dune, Kashtira was like the most powerful deck in the format. It performed very well at the national level. It is the deck that won the most like national events in the year. And to this day, the deck is still at a full, well, not full power, but at the same power level it was when it was doing very well before Dune. However, we are now looking at Unchained doing better than Kashtira like at the later rounds, and I kind of want to bring up to light something that probably makes it so they arrive at this conclusion. So when it comes to the power level between Unchained and like other decks in the format, I'd say that Kashtira is still the most feared deck in the format. However, a lot more people were prepared for it. A lot more cards to counter the strategy have been played very well, and it just goes to show you that if a deck is feared enough in the format, people will start to respect it, and if that deck is respected a lot, then the deck like is not going to perform as well as it did in the past. So today we're going to talk about Unchained and see if that favors through or not. The first thing I want to talk when it comes to Unchained, and the reason why I brought up Kashtira and brought up all of this in the first place, was out of every deck that we have in the format, Unchained is the deck that plays around the most cards that are being played in most decks. Like, we're talking about like Droll and Logbird, Dimensional Barrier, Dimension Shifter, like Effect Veiler Imperm, like old Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, like all of those cards that I just mentioned are being played in many decks, and Unchained is a strategy that plays around most of those cards. This deck doesn't really like hard to lose to Floodgates either. Like you can play around Skill Drain, you can play around like there can be only one is a really damaging Floodgate that can really hurt you. However, this deck does have tools to play around it, and if you're strategic enough, you don't necessarily have to just lose to the card. You can just play a slow game with the deck, and like you don't have to worry about most opposition. Another thing that makes Unchained very enticing this format, it is that it is a strategy that is good both going first and is good going second. Like, this deck has too many cards that are just very strong and resilient against like things that are like can counter you or interact with you. Not many cards can interact well with the Unchained cards. Like, for example, let's say if you're facing something like Runic, Runic are just gonna have a hard time because most of their cards revolve around destroying your cards, and and all these monsters are resilient to destruction. We don't have many cards in the game that are being played at the moment that just hard rids of monsters without destroying them. So that's another thing that Unchained does very well. If you go first, like the deck can actually set up very oppressive boards. They can summon the High King Wave Caesar. They can just have interruptions with cards like Escape. This deck can play hand traps as well. So Ash, Nib, Droll. As I brought up before before, you can actually play other Floodgates. Stuff like Rivalry and Skill Drain are very strong in this deck, and it's stuff that you can also use in your arsenal. So like that's just another thing that just makes this deck really strong. So now that we brought up things that make Unchained very enticing, what has happened to Unchained that makes them very adaptive as compared to the first month? In the first month of Dune, we already know that some cards being released, like the Unchained Soul Lord of Yama and the Sharvara and the Sayama, are just cards that were very strong. It made the deck a lot more consistent. It made it so it can do a lot of powerful plays. Just summoning like High King Wave Caesar is something that was very welcomed. But same way Chimera branded was adapting itself in the past month, the Unchained strategy also was adapting. One thing that we've been seeing is that a lot of builds play Tour Guide. At first, people were not a fan of Tour Guide because it just made it so it folds to like the cards that Unchained doesn't really lose to, like Veiler and Imperm and Book. However, um, the thing about all those cards is tour guide is like the only real card that can stop like with all those cards effectively. And sometimes if you have cards like Charvara or you have cards like Book, like you have other stuff to make it so you can just dodge all those cards. Like let's say you have a Archaea on board, for example, something like that. Um, if Turget resolves, it's just pretty much a blowout. Like we're talking about a one card engine that can summon the Yama, set up the Charvara. It grabs you follow up, it grabs you interruption, it grabs you extenders. Like this is pretty much like one of the better normal summons we have in the game outside of like Mirror Sword Knight. Um, like so that's one thing to take credit for. Um, so another thing that at least it was shown this weekend, um, it is the DDD engine. Basically, you're playing Contract and the Vice King. For those who don't know, Vice King's pendulum effect is that you can blow up a Dark Contract to special summon itself. And take note that it says that you destroy it. So destroying it is a lot more synergistic in this deck because it does trigger Jama's effect from the graveyard. Not only that, but this is a Fiend type monster, so it can make the Yama. And also, just playing Contracts in your deck, it gives you a search for target for the Wave King if the Wave King ends up being sent to the graveyard. Another really cool thing is that the Vice King is a DDD monster, so you can rank it up into summoning the Deus Machinex, and then you can use this to turn itself into like the High King Wave C. Not my bad, into the Zeus. So basically, you have a one card engine that gets you to Zeus without your normal summon, and it also makes the Yama, and it also can trigger the Yama's effect. So that's a really cool trick that like was being seen with some strategies. Both Pac and Jesse were on this tech in their Unchained deck. If you guys are interested, you can go watch the top 4. I'd say it was a very, very cool mirror match. This card was involved, and not only that, a lot of other tech cards were involved. One tech card that we didn't see in that particular duel, but we know that people were running, was Tracks. So 4 months ago, back when Cyberstorm Access got released, I did a Cosmo deck profile, and I brought up how Tracks was going to be like a really cool engine card, or a really good side deck card for decks like Unchained. And it kind of proved itself this weekend. This card can grab you cards like the Virus cards. It can grab you Dimensional Barrier. It can grab you like it can grab you your engine cards like the Chamber and the Escape. So I'd say that if you're playing Unchained, you should really highly consider this card in your side deck. Because this is a really, really strong card, and it could win you the game if you just search for good blowouts. But yeah, pretty much the conclusion of today is that after today's event, we can say that Unchained is pretty much a very strong strategy. It is a deck that you have to look out for. And who knows, maybe in the future, like, people will be more prepared for this deck and we'll be seeing more counters to it. Stay tuned, very, very soon. I am going to make a deck profile. It is a deck that I've been testing out for the past week, and I won't give it away too much, but that deck is really, really strong against, like, Unchained. I think Unchained almost never wins the matchup against the deck that I'm showing tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Also, the giveaways already concluded. I'll be messaging the winner of the mat. So thank you for everybody who participated. I will be doing another giveaway when I reach 200 subscribers. So if you really like my content and you really want to see more stuff in the future, stay tuned. Keep watching videos, share with your friends, and more importantly, keep practicing and keep dueling.